One.
You're just adjusting the microphone stand. It's very short. Hopefully like your speech will be. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you now please welcome, we have a double whammy tonight, ladies and gentlemen, would you now please welcome the Chuckle Brothers of the Best Men World, Richard Black and Steve Newman.
You'll have all heard the phrase, he's like a brother. But as I have grown up with Piers, in our case, this statement is entirely true. So in many ways, in Piers choosing me for today's role was not only a show of trust, but it was also a safe bet for him. Because he believes I would do nothing, ever, to hurt, embarrass, or belittle him. For those of you on the medal table, I can see you're instantly looking at the George Cross. Is it a miniature or full size? I couldn't say. I really couldn't say. It wouldn't be fair to know. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for being here. My name is Steve. I'm one of the two best men with Richard here, who are going to talk you through parts of Piers' life. I'm going to go through his formative years, whilst Richard will steer you through his more recent escapades. We felt that by pooling our resources in this speech, we could make the most of the vast quantities of highly usable material that Piers has left scattered on his way through life. The big problem was where to start. So, informing with tradition, before we go into the badlands of Piers' past, perhaps the day Piers told me about Victoria is as good a place as any. We were at Lord's Cricket Ground for the first test match of the summer. I could sense something was up with Piers the moment I saw him. I just couldn't put my finger on quite what. He continued to squirm like a restless child until just before the lunch break, when he slowly and slightly awkwardly leant closer and closer towards me, and in a nervous whisper, as if the whole of Lord's was hanging on his every word, in a hushed tone, he stammered, I have met someone. Now, you may think it uncharitable, but my first thought was, which of his dodgy websites had come up trumps? But I didn't share this thought, and I continued to listen intently. And by now, with tears almost welling in his eyes, almost sobbing with an emotion we rarely see from Piers, he added, she really could be the one. She's really, really nice. She, hallelujah, she's a girl, his parents will be pleased. You see, in earlier days, as the founder of at least one George Michael fan club, there have been some real concerns on this front at all. But as you all may know, Piers has an interest in history. And as any good historian will tell you, We only learn for the future by studying our past. So, I think it's a wholly appropriate time to have a closer look at Piers' past. Piers was always destined for great things. You could see it from his childhood, if you just knew where to look. Some of the earliest signs were as young as aged 5, when he created his useful box, into which all things children would love to play with, such as toilet rolls, tin cans, empty washing up bottles, would be stored. However, it was not as you would expect with any other normal child, there to be played with and enjoyed at a later date. No. For Piers, these were commodities to be rented, swapped or sold to visiting children. So, buy cheap, sell expensive was the new mantra for our 5-year-old budding Richard Branson. And even better was if you could get it for free and sell it expensive, which was the central pillar for 2 of his earliest master plans. He perhaps surprisingly, for one of such tender years, moved straight into the world of natural resources. In this early venture, the object of his desire was, no, not oil, or gas, or even gold, but conkers. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the humble horse chestnut that could be picked up for free, usually by other people, stored at my house at no cost to him, and then sold on at a profit once autumn had passed, was going to be his passport to wealth. Well, it may now seem obvious that to conquer the world on such a common commodity was patently absurd, and for those of you here today in the conquer storage business will already no doubt be discussing the 3 common problems he needed to overcome. Firstly, they stank. Secondly, they rotted. And thirdly, nobody actually bought the bloody thing. But apart from that, pure genius, pure genius. But this failure was followed by him flirting with a little-known criminal activity, in which he risked being sucked into a dark underworld. This was in his quest to hoard perhaps the world's largest collection of milk bottles. Yes, the upstanding man we see before us today would scamper down driveways, face covered, liberating rare specimens from suburban doorsteps. Now, if you wish to question him on this subject, he will admit, under duress, to still owning some 500 of these cherished collectibles. And for those of you here involved in the milk bottle storage business, will doubtlessly be questioning where he kept such treasures. I can now reveal that even to this day, there is not room for so much as a toolbox in my shed. But like all entrepreneurs, he was not deterred by his limited success in these early ventures. Piers moved onwards and upwards. He realised he had to raise his game, and that the really big money was only to be made with investment. He had to speculate to accumulate. So Piers fortunately turned his back on a life of crime, and his next scheme was far more in line with all his capitalist beliefs. Brilliant, elaborate, risky, exploitive, yet perhaps even foolproof. But ladies and gentlemen, it was not all good news, as the next move was into the world of porn. This plan was sure to make Essex's answer to Hugh Hefner a large and handsome profit. A large and handsome profit. The scheme involved sending his ever eager to please younger brother Dan to the local corner shops that had a well-known reputation for selling certain top-shelf magazines to underage customers. Thus, in this manoeuvre, Piers insulated himself from any risk if, in the acquisition stage of his cunning plan, all went horribly wrong. And such was the diligence of this young man that we all marvelled at how precise Piers was in carefully recording all his new magazines into his stock book. Indeed, that gets worse. Indeed, this was something he would always insist on doing, himself, alone. Locked away and in private. And it could sometimes take many hours of diligent effort before he would emerge again completely satisfied. But following this lengthy process, the magazines, of course, needed to be hidden. For those of you here in the porn magazine storage business, well, I'm sure will be wondering where one so young found a safe and secure distribution centre. The answer is simple. My house. So once again, Piers insulated himself from the fallout should there be a parental discovery of his seedy stockpile. He would then rent these magazines out to the younger children at his school. He would carefully recover his outlay through rent, and once that was achieved, he would sell the asset for the full cover price and realise his ill-gotten gain. But there was one fatal flaw in the long-term business plan of Piers's porn empire. He left school that year. And thus, with his departure, separated from his hardcore customers, the business quickly collapsed, leaving Piers never wanting to experience the bitter taste of failure again. So, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Piers moved on from being a criminal mastermind and failed porn mogul to combining his work and hobby together, and he entered the world of bric-a-brac and tits. Bits, tit-bits, bric-a-brac and tit-bits. I knew I should have written antiques. And with Piers's career now mapped out, it was time to start enjoying the finer things in life.